Hello, I'm Bart Cox. I'm the CFO at Abundant Life, and I've been the CFO now for just over 3 months, and it's kind of part of my story. I'm going to be going over discerning God's will for your life, and I'm really excited to bring this. There's been times in my life where I would not have been interested in speaking on this topic, but God's got me in just a really good place of having the opportunity to see discernment come through and be able to speak about it. So just a couple of things about me. My wife, Stormy, and I, we have 3 boys, and so we've gone through the process of raising them for the most part. I've got 2 boys that are adults, and they're both married, and I've got one still in high school. He's a junior. And so over the last year, we've been making that transition from having children to having adult children, and so it's been an exciting journey. And one of the things we've done in the last year was we started the process of having a church house, an Abundant Life church house. And even that is a story that I'd like to tell as part of as we unpack this, how do we discern God's voice or God's will for our life? I think a lot of times when we're trying to discern what God would have us do with our lives, we get stuck on the change part. And we're so focused on not wanting to change that, the proverbial door that gets shut, the door is just barely softly closed in our face. And we're like, well, that's a closed door. I guess I should just keep doing whatever I was doing. And so what I'd like to do, for the next half hour is just really go through and unpack some of the strategies that I've used personally, that I've seen people that I really trust use to discern God's call on their life. So kind of going back to a couple of things, I guess the first thing would be the church house. When we were trying to discern, should my wife and I, should we start a church house? And I've spoken on this a couple of times before. We've now had the church house for over a year. It's been an amazing decision that we made. And originally when I was thinking about my wife and I, we were talking about maybe starting a church house, it was very scary. And looking back now, I have no idea why. But it truly, I think, is just the change piece. And then the second thing I'm going to be kind of talking about as we go through this process of talking about discerning God's will is my job change. Going from a job where I worked with guys I super loved, did that job for 7 years, had a great opportunity, and just promotion-wise had taken some opportunities working with people that I really love, and then got called to come to ministry at Abundant Life and work with Pastor Phil and the executive team as CFO, maybe unpack some of that. But I guess the first thing would be this, kind of the key scripture, the thing that I think we think about a lot when we think about this is 1 Samuel 16:7. But the Lord said to Samuel, do not consider his appearance or his height, for I have rejected him. The Lord does not look at these things people look at. People look at the outward appearance, but the Lord looks at the heart. And really what I think about there, I think about, okay, so let's back up. Samuel was going to Jesse's place, and he'd been told by God to go and find the next king. Somebody's going to replace Saul. And so he goes to Jesse's house, and Jesse, has his boys all ready to go so that Samuel can kind of look through these boys. And I just want to point out that, David wasn't even there. He was off somewhere else. So even David's father, who conceivably saw him all the time and trusted him to do certain things, didn't recognize that this was potentially something that David would even be, viable for. So Jesse didn't see it. Samuel didn't see it. David's out, with tending livestock. He didn't see it. And so I just want to stop there for a second. Sometimes we feel a call to maybe go in a certain way, or we think we're being called to go and do something, and it seems daunting or it seems really, really big, and we doubt ourselves. And not only do we doubt ourselves, but we don't even have anybody else maybe speaking into us what we think would be encouragement to that direction. And so I just want to point out this story because It's clearly a time where God had an idea of what he wanted to do in the heart of David and use David in a certain way. And there wasn't anybody at the time that was really thinking David was the right choice or even a choice. So I think that one's interesting. And then, you can, from a discernment perspective, once you've kind of gotten over that, even deciding that you're going to take the next step. I think of Gideon and the fleece. That's another common one we think about, where Gideon lays the fleece out and then he, basically makes a deal with God and says, hey, if this fleece has dew on it tomorrow morning, then I'll take that as a sign. And then that sign comes. And then then even though he's seen the sign now, he determines that, all right, well, let's test this another time. And so you kind of know the story of Gideon doing that. But, the reason I point those things out is because I think it's human nature for us to think, well, that's somebody else that's going to do that. It's not me. I don't want to change. I don't want to have to do that thing. Or maybe I'm not even the right person to do that thing. So I want to back up. And so 7 years ago, I left a job that I'd had for 18 years. And I went to work for a really good friend of mine. And his name is Dustin Dahl. Very successful entrepreneur. He's been on, I don't even know how many, top 40 CEOs under 40. He's had a lot of success in his life. And so he and I started talking, and there was maybe an opportunity for me to come work on his team. And my first thoughts were, this is a lot of responsibility. I don't necessarily think I want to do that. It's scary. All the things we think about. But fast forward, and I end up taking that job, and I'm working for him. And I will say this, and I'm going to get into this in a little bit with regard to mentors and strategy, but just to a little bit of backstory, having somebody in your life that's pushing you and driving you and helping you be the best you can be is really important. And for me, discerning God's will, I go back to something that he told me one time. So we're sitting in a room, and he has this idea that he wants to develop an app. And I'm thinking, wow, our team, we don't have any app experience. So why would we be the right people to develop an app? And then he starts unpacking what he wants it to be. And if you don't know Dustin, he's just this vision guy. And he's always thinking, multiple years out ahead of where everybody else is thinking. So he has this idea and he pitches it. And it's actually an app now that you can go in the App Store and download. It's called My SharePal. But at the time, he's saying, hey, I've got this idea for an app. It's going to help people share their faith, because he's the kind of guy that's like, he's in business to do business things and win at business, but he wants to use that to do ministry. And so this was the thing that he wanted to go after. And so I had the opportunity to be in the room when he's laying this out. And I'm thinking, my first thoughts are, man, why would we do this? Why don't we just fund somebody else doing this? Because we don't have any experience making an app, and we don't have any experience XYZ. I had all the no's and all the reasons why not. And the reason I tell that story is because I'm going to probably say these next words several times throughout this process of helping you understand, like, how do you discern God's will for your life? He looked me straight in the eye and he said, why not us? And why not now? And and whenever somebody says that to you, especially somebody that's had a lot of success, it's really hard to, it's kind of a, there's some finality to that. It's like, well, okay, I don't know, why not us? Why not now? And so I thought about that this whole time, even when going back to that church house, thinking about starting that church house, all being scared about it, being nervous about it for really silly reasons, but then thinking, there's not a church house in Pleasant Hill where I live, and why not us? Why not now? And then fast forwarding to this job that I now have, where I get to work at Abundant Life as a CFO, and I get to work alongside the executive team doing what is just a fastball right down the middle as far as things I love to do, helping the team to work operationally, help the team financially, make great, the best stewardship decisions we can. Going back to that story, I started having thoughts like, working for Dustin, working at the business he had, helping him personally, and all these things that I really super loved. I started having this feeling like, hey, I'm interested in maybe doing something at the church. I wonder what opportunities there are there, because I was really getting involved in the church house side. And it had nothing to do with wanting, in fact, it had a lot, I didn't want to leave where I was, but I also was feeling this burden. And so kind of the first thing you start feeling when you're trying to work through something or discern something is, God's will in your life. What is it that God has planned for you? And are you not heading that way because you're scared or not? So as I think about that, and I think about the move that I ended up making, I actually ended up using, Dustin's words, maybe against him a little bit, which is, why not me? Why not now? Why not start the process? And so I wanted to maybe reach out to somebody at the church. And so the first thing I did was I decided not to do that. The first thing I did was I decided to pray for guidance. And this seems like really simple. I mean, this is like one of the easiest things you could possibly do, right? Everybody says to do this. But for me, what does this look like? Praying for guidance. Asking God for guidance and so that he'll open up your heart to his will. The first thing I did was I petitioned God. When I think about petitioning God, what does that mean? It means that you are truly making space for you to be able to listen to God's voice. So you're going to petition him about the thing that's really on your mind. You're going to really get vulnerable. And so to do that, you start out by praying and you start out with, all of the things. You go to God. Sometimes it's worshipful at first, and then you move through the part where you're praying to God and you're asking him to forgive you. You're really trying to get down to a place where you can, through Jesus, because of Jesus' death and resurrection, you can be in the throne room of God and you have the opportunity to ask him questions. So you go to God and you start petitioning him. So secondly, how do you do that? How do you listen for his voice? And so some of the things that come to mind, I call these truck thoughts. Some people call these car thoughts, whatever you want to call them. But for me personally, just the strategy that I use, and I would really encourage you to try this, is we live in an age right now where there is just noise constantly. I mean, there's constantly something going. It's either the noise of road noises, it's fans, even right now in this auditorium where I'm speaking to you, coming to you through this video, I hear noises behind me, beside me. I hear my own voice reverbing just a little bit. And so we're just in an age of noise. And so when you get in your vehicle and you normally listen to a podcast or you listen to music, you're filling your time constantly with things that are distracting you maybe from hearing God's voice. So what I started doing is a strategy that I've been doing now for several years. And I pick a couple of days a week. And when I get in my vehicle to make my commute, I don't turn on the radio. I don't listen to a podcast. I just start with prayer. And obviously, if you're driving, you're going to do that with your eyes open. But it ends up being this constant state of prayer where it's not like you're starting the prayer with the same thing that you start every time. It's kind of like you're just endlessly praying. And so I end up in this endless conversation with God the Father, who has invited me into the throne room to be able to ask him questions. And just like maybe having a dad on earth would be, it's like I'm able to go and really just pose questions and listen for what he's maybe telling me. But picking those few days a week and listening in my truck on the way to work were so huge because as I'm unpacking my own thoughts, and I'm not saying I hear audible words from God, but as I'm unpacking my own thoughts and I'm searching myself, it just makes for a way for me to have those moments where I can be speaking to God and allow a chance to hear from him. The last one would be looking for confirmation. As you're praying through these things and as you're trying to discern his will for your life, if you're not hearing his voice audibly, which, some people do hear from God audibly. I've never had that opportunity. So what I do is I look for confirmation through things like my spouse, my brother, a coworker, a friend. I look at life events. What is happening in your life right now that would be causing you to think, hey, this is something that is a good idea, or hey, maybe I should pump the brakes on this idea. And so in my case, as I'm praying through and I'm having these truck thoughts, I take it to my best friend, which is my wife. So my wife, Stormy, and I, we've been married for 27 years. And, she's somebody I can truly trust with an infant thought and know that thought's not going to go anywhere. So I mentioned it to her. And she even had some of her own thoughts that she could, she's even been thinking some of the thoughts I'd been thinking, like maybe there's an opportunity for me to help in a bigger way as the church grows. And so then, as soon as we start having those thoughts and I start confirming that with her, the voice comes in my head. Why would you be the right guy to do that, Bart? Why would, of all the people that God could use in the Abundant Life ministry to come and help wrangle finances and help operationally, why would you even be the right choice? And so then that kind of quells my excitement, and it causes me to reflect and rethink again. And then I go back to my friend and my, a great leader in my life for so many years and still is, but Dustin, what would Dustin say? He would say, why not me and why not now? And so then that gives me the energy to go back to God and continue petitioning and continue seeking out whether or not this is a good idea. So when looking for confirmation, it's a good idea to be able to seek wise counsel. So just really quickly in a few steps here, what does it look like to seek wise counsel? Sometimes we look at seeking wise counsel and what that looks like, especially when our pride is high and our humility is low. Seeking wise counsel looks a lot like me going to somebody and just telling them what I want to do. I'm not there to learn anything. I'm not there because I'm a know-it-all at this point. And actually, as a side note, I just want to point out that I like to tell people up front, I'm a recovering know-it-all. I think a lot of mathematically minded people start their lives as know-it-alls. And as we mature and we learn some really hard lessons along the way, and especially if we have a pathway with the Father and we're getting discipled and ministered to, the best we can hope for is never to ever kick that habit, but to be recovering from that habit. So I'm a recovering know-it-all. And I can tell you this, that when you go to a mentor or you go to a friend, you're really trying to seek wise counsel. If you're a know-it-all, you need to get that out of the way. Am I seeking to understand or am I seeking to be understood? And so that's a key point, I think. So one of the things I want to point out too is make seeking wise counsel an intentional part of your life. Don't just go from major discerning thing that I need to decide right now to the next major discerning thing that I need to decide right now and seek out wise counsel in those strenuous moments. Develop a plan and a strategy in your life to be seeking wise counsel and have people, on the bench, people that you're listening to already, that you're regularly making time for so that you can seek that wise counsel and not wait until it's too late to go and build that bench. Being humble, being coachable so that you can be continuously learning. Just saying that you're an expert, as soon as you say that you're an expert in a field, you have stopped learning because there's nobody else you can learn from. So humble, coachable, seeking wise counsel. The next thing I would say is developing relationships in advance of that wise counsel is really important. And so, seeking those people and building that bench as kind of a final thing to say about that would be when you are looking to find these people, finding them just in your close friends group sometimes can be problematic because sometimes your close friends will not be willing to tell you what you need to hear, what you really need to hear. They're maybe wanting to affirm you in some way or not tell you the hard thing. And so seeking wise counsel that's maybe outside of your immediate friends group, somebody that you really trust that has had some success in some areas that you want to have success in would be a good idea. And so that's that last part of, making sure that wise counsel is outside of your inner circle. Not in all cases. It's great to develop that inner circle, but finding some people that you can bring into that inner circle that maybe just aren't just organic friends, I think can be really important. And so what do you do if you get to this point and you say, Bart, I've got a major decision. I'm trying to discern something right now in my life, and I haven't done that. I haven't developed a bench of people that I can go to and, try to seek counsel from. And so what I would say to that would be look in your groups that you're already in and find people. Another thing that can happen whenever the why not me, why not now thing, sometimes you're worried about, like if you see somebody that's really successful and you think, ooh, it'd be really great to be coached by that person, or ooh, it would be really awesome if I could go and just spend, an hour with that person and get their feedback. Well, I can tell you this, There's been times even recently where I've been told, hey, Bart, you're kind of an intimidating person. When somebody first gets to know me, I'm a little bit intimidating because, I don't know, maybe I'm just too serious, or maybe I don't smile a lot whenever I'm pondering. But sometimes people that can really help you, you don't seek them out because you're worried that they're not going to want to help you. And I would just say this: I am at the age of my life now where I'm helping more people, and people seek me out because I've held some positions that are higher. I've had some experiences that, I've come through the ringer. I've been in executive rooms where I've had my face melted because, something didn't go right, and the buck stops with the leader who's in the room, and it was me. So since I've had those experiences, it's time for me now to start sharing those experiences with other people. And so I can just say this: I love it whenever somebody comes up to me and asks me to sit down with them or meet with them because they want to run something by me. And I can tell you this, all the way up to somebody like a Dustin Dahl, who is a relatively busy person, who was my mentor and really led me through a bunch of my growth years. You ask somebody like that, hey, would you mind mentoring me? And even start out saying, hey, it's not like I'm not asking you for a weekly mentorship or a monthly mentorship. I would love to have an hour of your time just to run something by you, and then maybe get some ideas, and maybe you can connect me with some people who you think would be good to mentor me. And so I would say that when you feel like you need a mentor and you feel like you haven't built that bench, don't be scared to go out and ask people thinking that they're gonna say no to you, because 9 times out of 10, or even maybe 99 times out of 100, that person is gonna be very excited for you to ask them to mentor them. Or even if they can't, they might be able to find somebody for you that can. So I think that's really important. Seeking wise counsel, don't be a know-it-all. So then this next piece in seeking wise counsel, let's go back. Yeah, checking yourself against wrong motivations. So, all right, so you've done all the things, right? You've prayed for guidance. You've had your truck thoughts. You've looked for confirmation. You've trusted some people that you can trust with those stages of infancy where this idea is pretty new and you're kind of scared to let that thing out in the wild. You've done those things. So now you've sought wise counsel, which was that second step. You've been intentional. You've sought out a few people. Now, things seem to be going in a very positive direction. You're getting a lot of affirmation. There's no big major doors that have been shut in your walk with this. And moving on from there. So the next step here is checking yourself against wrong motivations. And I think one that is really important here is pride. I can tell you of several instances in my life where I jumped into some leadership position or something. Maybe it was a little too early. And some of the reasons why were, do I want this because God's calling me to do this? Or do I want this because other people have spoken into me about this, and now it's a thing and it's out there into the wild? And now to not accept that position would look bad, or that sort of thing. So I think that, with regard to pride, instead of searching for humility in yourself, pray that God will give it to you so that you know that, listen, am I, just checking it this way, is what I'm wanting to do, am I wanting to do it because I want a position of pride? Or is it truly that this is in humility and I want to serve, or I want to do this because I think it would be fun, it would be edifying, I could be good at it, and I could really help the organization, or I could help the ministry that I'm maybe seeking to serve. The next one is power. Maybe the word fame would come to mind. Am I interested in how this could make me look and appear? Am I interested in running for some political office and this position on this board, being on the church board, or signing up to be a member of this, this society, or to lead a certain thing? Is it because of pride? Is it because of power? Is it because of this fame that I may be able to derive from that? And so hopefully what you can do is listen, think of it this way, am I interested in this for the right reasons, or am I thinking about this for the wrong reasons, being pride, arrogance? And then the last thing is, and this one can get you too, provision. Maybe this thing that you're wanting to do pays really well. Maybe it would be a real step up for you and your family. So while that can be a key element, God has asked us as leaders, he's given us the opportunity as leaders, rather, to be able to provide for our families, to be able to, in a position where maybe compensation is part of it. It's not a volunteer position. So getting paid to do something isn't bad. But let's just make sure that if all things were equal and I could do this job as a volunteer and everything else would be provided for in some other vocation, would I still want to do this? I think that's an important thing that you can think about, whenever you're thinking about that. So checking yourself against pride, power, and making sure that provision isn't the biggest thing that you're trying to look for in your decision. And so, as I kind of wrap this up and I think about, these stories of my own moving on, I want to kind of close up those stories now. Thinking about going back to, I'm going to go back to my time working for, again, I've said his name several times, but Dustin Dahl. One of the things that can happen to you, and I think he's learning this now because, if you've ever read the book by John Maxwell, the 5 Levels of Leadership, it's a really interesting situation. As you progress in levels of leadership, you start to become, the end goal is that you become a leader who's churning out other leaders. And this occurred to me recently when I was preparing to talk about God's discernment and God's will and how you can discern it. And it actually occurred to me this way. Dustin, while he was preparing me for the 7 years that I worked for him, and he was really leading me and pushing me and growing me and making sure that I was reading books alongside him and that sort of thing. One of the things that happened in the end was I moved away from the organization and started working for the church. And so, sometimes the thanks you get for being a great leader, a level 4 or a level 5 leader, is you end up rising up these leaders. You invest in these people. In my case, it was 7 years he invested in me, got me to a level where I could really start helping him. And then I moved away from his organization. And then he, had to, hopefully, he did. He has several people teed up that he's leading. But that's the thing too about being a leader, just as a side note, that sometimes you think to yourself, well, I don't want to leave my current organization because I love this person. And I don't even want to think about having to tell him, hey, I'm thinking about taking a job somewhere else. And so that can even play into your decision to maybe take this next job or do this next thing that you feel like that you're trying to discern God's voice about in your life. And so I can just tell you to make the end of the story happy. I called a meeting with Dustin and we talked about this, and I just brought it out. I was shaking like a leaf. And I told him, hey, man, I feel like God is calling me to this other thing. And he took it so well, so well. He was, in the moment, probably a lot of things were running through his mind, like, okay, well, I'm going to have to backfill some things that you were doing. But he was really supportive, and he helped me move on. And it really helped me be able to come to you now and tell you, listen, if one of the deal breaker problems that you're having with this discernment is, you feel like you've prayed for guidance, you've sought wise counsel, you've checked against wrong motivations, and now you're up against this wall of, I feel like the current person I'm working for, it would be devastating to the business, or the person would be really mad if I told him I was going to move away. And I can tell you this, that if God is truly calling you to this, God's going to provide that person in the business to come up and backfill your spot so that can keep running and keep operating. You want to worry about what's going on in the background. You don't want to just walk away from something that isn't running well and not care anymore. But at the same time, if you really have followed these steps and you sense you're discerning that God has something next in store for you, don't let that last little hang up be the problem, because that last hang up, that change piece, is the piece that most of us hate. It's the piece that most of us don't do well. And as humans, we get really nervous and scared about it. So, just in closing, that piece for me was the scariest part, and it was honestly the easiest part. I let the team know what I was wanting to do. Dustin was awesome about it. We developed a plan. He helped me offboard with excellence. And now I'm getting the opportunity to do something that I love to do for a church that I love to serve. And I serve in that volunteer capacity as a church house leader, but now also as the CFO. So if I had listened to some of my early thoughts, like, ooh, why me? Surely somebody else could do this. Even things like door shutting. Some people say, well, a door kind of shut, and so maybe that's a good reason why I shouldn't pursue this. I would just say, sometimes a door shuts, and it may not be a door that God closed. I like to tell people you should kick that door down and see what's behind it. Let's make sure that it's a door that wasn't a soft, something that you need to push through. Seeking wise counsel, talking to your people about those doors is important. But I wanted to definitely get that in and make sure that I said that just because a door soft closes or is closed doesn't mean you shouldn't push through it. So I really hope that these 3 points of just being able to pray for guidance, seek wise counsel, checking yourself against wrong motivations, and then just some of my story that led me to go and ask the church, hey, is there any opportunity for somebody like me to use my skill sets here, coming to the place I am now? I really hope that that's been helpful. And I'm just really excited to just be thinking about all the people on the other end of this who can be using what I've learned in my lifetime to really help you discern God's will for your life. Thank you.